I'm Miranda. I'm Miranda Arieh, and I'm a mental health coach and singer-songwriter from Leeds. Short and snappy.
Short and snappy. Well, there you go. And many, many other things as well, and many qualities.
Short and
Miranda,
snappy.
what's been good about your day today?
What's been good about my day? Today, I have worked with some really beautiful clients, some coaching clients, and I've really enjoyed it. And I had a new client this morning who I adored having a session with. I like bringing in new clients, and so it's been beautiful.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. New people, sunshiny people in your life, that you are a sunshine to everybody else, and let other people be a sunshine to you. There we go. Miranda, I've got a cup of tea here, so if I turn around every now and then and grab my tea, I don't want to look rude. I'm just wetting my whistle, so to speak. Have you got a drink with you? You
wet away, Carrie. I ain't got a drink. No.
Okay, right. So we're going to be talking today. Oh, sorry. Go on, darling.
Oh, I was just saying I'm surrounded by crystals and fake plants, but no drink.
Oh, crystals and fake plants. That's so much more interesting than my cup of tea. Maybe you can send me some positive energy vibes from your beautiful plants and crystals as we move through the conversation. I'll just wet my whistle.
Go for it.
Lovely. Okay. Resilience. I feel like I'm talking to the right person when we say that word. And resilience we can talk around in two worlds that you live in. The world of being an artist and resilience for that, and the world of being a mental health coach and working in well-being extremely well. Yeah. First, let's look at the meaning of resilience, which is to face challenges very quickly. And I've paraphrased that, so I'm going to say exactly what it is in the dictionary. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. So not so much to face challenges, but I think that is part of resilience, but to recover quickly from difficulties. Do you feel like that's a good definition of resilience, and would you suggest that's a good thing to do?
Yeah, I feel like that's a beautiful description of resilience. You know, we could call it the bounce back as well, the ability to bounce back. But you know what? I reckon Chumbawamba had it nailed, and they coined the definition of resilience when they said, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. And it's really beautiful. And it's now actually up in neon, in a big neon sign on the side of West Yorkshire Playhouse. Have you seen that, Carrie?
I have. How can you not see it? No, absolutely. I've seen it, yeah.
And they come from Leeds.
Oh, they do. They do come from Leeds.
Yeah, they do. So, yeah, I feel like that's a really beautiful description. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down.
Fantastic. Everybody at some point in their life has to learn how to get back up again, because absolutely everybody, whether you are 2 years old or 75 years old, faces challenges. Before we sort of go into it further, I just want to segue a little bit onto I struggle with the idea of quickly. I feel there's negative connotations. Hello, everybody. I feel there's negative connotations around this idea that you're expected to recover quickly from things. Like there's a certain expectancy to deal with something very quickly, when maybe taking your time is a better thing. I just wondered if you had any comments on that.
Well, I think with anything, so if we talk about recovery or we talk about healing, you know, whatever we want to call it, feeling better, you know, if we come from a mental health angle, well, it's a process, isn't it? So, and actually, when it comes to recovery and healing, the field that I work within mental health, there is no end point. We're not one day, we're not just better and we've got to the end and they say, well, I'm recovered, I'm better. Recovery is a process, and it's a journey, and it's a beautiful one to be on. And we kind of don't even want it really to end. Do you know what I mean? And it's self-defined, and we don't want to rush it. You know, we want to be able to take it in our own sweet time. And there's no pressure with that. And I think that if something's going to beat down your resilience is if we have that voice in our head saying, I should be further along than this. I should have bounced back quicker. You know, when we start to criticize our own resilience, surefire way to destroy resilience. Do you know what I mean?
So there's a sensitivity around the word to recover quickly in this sort of dictionary definition. Actually, maybe you're not ready to recover quickly, or don't be critical of yourself if you haven't recovered quickly. But it's about being on a constant process of resilience. And would you say that there is a way of mastering resilience, and it's useful for people to consciously think about resilience all the time?
Interesting one. Well, I feel like if we want a recipe for resilience, it's really powerful to lean into the ingredients of faith and hope. And, you know, sometimes when we are swamped so under, and a weight is coming down on us and things are feeling heavy and we're feeling surrounded, whether it's with fear or grief or loss or pain, perceiving low vibrating emotions, we could call them. If we call them, if there's a gallon of that going on in your life, milliliter within that of faith and hope. We have a milliliter of hope. If we focus on that hope, we need to recognize that it is expansive. So what we want to do is we want to lean into hope and faith. I believe that that's the recipe for resilience, because if we have those ingredients within us and we're bringing those internally and we're leaning into faith and we're leaning into hope, and we have that knowing, that deep knowing from the higher self, things can improve.
I really like that phrase, leaning in. And I know that in the past, as a friend, you've used that phrase with me, and that was really helpful because it strips away the expectation of me to just suddenly have something or to search for it where I don't know where to look for it. But actually, if you just lean into it and allow yourself to, the visualization of it helped, I think, to allow yourself to just go there. It's already there, and just give yourself permission. That kind of phrase helped me a little bit when I was kind of like trying to lean into something that I found difficult. So I really like that. I really like that phrase that you just used then. So people struggle with resilience because, and you're the expert in this. This is just, you know, what I've experienced, that people get trapped in sort of default thinking. So I know for myself, I've kind of nurtured this voice in my brain that says, that's something out of your league. That's something you can't do. This is something that's to fear. You don't know how to handle it, so you're completely lost. Whereas if we're going to think of ways to be resilient, the first thing that you mentioned then was hope. And how do people, this is probably a very difficult question, and I'm sorry, but I know you can handle it. What does hope look like, and how do people reach hope?
How do people reach hope? Well, do you know, a belief is just a thought we keep thinking. So we need to really recognize that we can recondition the mind, you know, and that thought in itself is a thought of hope. I believe strongly that recovery is always possible. And I know that it's true because I'm living proof. Okay. It doesn't mean I don't suffer anymore. I want to get very, very real. I'm a mental health expert. I've worked in this field for so long. I've worked with thousands of clients. I know I've got the knowledge and some skills and tools, and I've worked in my own recovery journey. Doesn't mean I don't suffer anymore. I want to just be real with that for a start. But I know recovery is possible. And recovery is as much as you deciding to affirm today, I am in recovery. And that is a hopeful thought. And this is how we nurture hope. Even if we do not believe something, if we tell ourselves it enough, it will become true. Just as when we're kids, we've all been conditioned in different ways. If someone has told us enough, you are not worthy, or they've shown us you are not worthy of love, for example, you are not worthy, you're not good enough. They're the most common limiting beliefs that I encounter in the field of mental health. If we're told that enough, we get conditioned to believe it. Okay, we didn't think that was true to start with. We are not born like that. Yeah. But it just shows that neuroplasticity, it's called. I don't want to get all scientific because I'm definitely not a scientist. But, you know, our brains are permanently renewing and growing and changing. And the cells, you know, our skin is literally shedding. Our hair is. Our brains are growing in new ways. So we need to start flooding out the negative self-talk, the limiting self-belief, the limiting beliefs, those fear stories, I sometimes like to call them, the stories that we tell ourselves that are so limiting. We can start flooding them out with something new. We need to bring something new. But shall I tell you what? Healing is not about bringing something new from the external and going, what do I need to heal? What do I need to bring in? It comes from within. So it's for you. And A Course in Miracles, I'm a student of a book called A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles so beautifully says, my salvation comes from me. It cannot come from anywhere else. Other people, events, experiences, achievements. It can come from me. So we start to nurture that kinder inner voice. And eventually, I guarantee you the brain catches on. I promise you the brain catches on. And maybe this is how we grow hope. We tell ourselves that hope is possible.
So if we're going to start thinking about changing and I'll just use my term again because I can't remember yours, but it was much nicer. If we're going to start changing the default thinking that we've been led, the ideas that we've been led to believe about ourselves by our outside environment, and we're going to take control of that. I'm just trying to hold on to some of the things that you were saying. And it seems like the first step that you might need to take is in some way identifying yourself as being on a journey, or in some way as identifying yourself as in recovery. Is that quite an important thing to sort of accept and dedicate time to? I am now in this place of searching myself and in recovery.
Well, do you know what I believe? I believe that the second that we decide that we are ready for change, this is when recovery can start. So, and I believe that if we are able to say, I'm ready for change, 50% of the work is done. And I call it work, but it's not really hard work. It's a relief, actually. Recovery is a relief. It's relieving. It's not hard work at all. Do you know what I mean? It can be very painful, opening up those wounds. But so we start by recognizing we're ready for change. And do you know what? For most people, it's that the suffering has just got too much. And that's what happened with me. The suffering just got too much. It was too much for me. I couldn't live like that anymore. I literally could not live like that anymore. The emotional suffering was so bad for me in my past with my mental health. It was just excruciating. Do you know what I mean? And the suffering got too much. And I was like, right, I'm ready for change. This is it. And my higher self kind of kicked in. But I would say the first step, if we're talking about starting to combat that inner dialogue, the negative self-talk, those limiting beliefs, those old stories from our past, actually, they're always the voice of the past, whether it's from someone else or something that we've learned from school or parents, etc. The first step is bringing awareness to what we already have going on. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to start just witnessing that voice. We just want to start getting to know it. And I always tell people, don't try and judge it. Don't judge it as good or bad. Don't label it right or wrong, good or bad, better, worse. Just watch it. Don't try and attack it. Don't try and even change it to start with, actually. I wouldn't even tell people to change it to start with. Just watch it. Become familiar with, oh, that's interesting. I just told myself that I'm not good enough again. Oh, interesting.
And just to say really briefly before you carry on, that's something that I've tried to practice. And it in my mind, it's I visualize it as you trying to separate yourself from yourself. Because you are so you're thinking, and if you're used to criticizing yourself and judging yourself, that's your thought pattern, and that's your mind, and that's your voice. So actually, I know you'd advised me of that in the past, and I struggled with it at first because to observe, if I was thinking something like, "Why am I doing this way? This is ridiculous," or I've been self-critical, I just became part of that self-critical pattern, and I struggled to sort of go, "You're being self-critical again. Let's just have a look at the context of this." Though after practice, I could do it because you have to dedicate yourself to a certain amount, of sort of goes or trying of a new technique. But it did kind of work. It did work eventually, and I find myself doing it now with, right, I'm anxious. It's fine to be anxious. I can feel anxiety here. I can feel anxiety there. That's because I'm feeling a certain way about this future event. But that's no saying that future event is going to be bad. So why am I feeling anxious now? Just sit with anxiety. And actually, it did work after a while. But I just wanted to sort of interrupt there and say that it can be difficult to sort of observe yourself in that way.
Oh yeah, and this is again going back to that point that you made earlier, where we don't have to nail it in a day. Do you know, my friend Fran, she's so wise and she's just so amazing to talk to about this stuff. And she literally just said to me one day, she just went, Miranda, you don't have to rid the ego in a day. Like this, it's my ego coming up and all this, and we overthink, and it's like, yeah, we don't have to rid the ego in a day. I tell all my clients and patients this now. It's like we don't have to overnight just suddenly be able to change it. And like you said, it's that practice. And what we're doing in that process where we're bringing that awareness and we're watching that voice of fear, Yes, you're right. We want that kind of separation. We actually want connection, essentially, but we want to separate our identity from that. And the only way that we can tackle that voice of fear is if we know what we're dealing with. So this is why the first step is about bringing that awareness, shining a light, and we see what's going on there. Do you know what I mean? Because only then do we know. We have that self-awareness, that sort of ability to bring something new in. And when we shine a light, darkness can't survive in the presence of light, so we start flooding that in. And we start.
That's interesting. I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you again, just because you're saying stuff that's making me go woo woo. But I had a coaching session once a couple of years ago, and he said to me, he suggested, if I view myself as being silly, if I say to myself, "Carrie Ann, you're being silly again," and just find myself amusing, like when I was getting these thoughts about what people were thinking or what I was doing, or if I was offending anybody, to just go, "Oh, you've been so silly. Look at me. Look at my face. I'm amusing." And just find myself humorous by the way I was thinking or the way I was behaving. I think he suggested that because we've honed into the idea that that I love comedy, and that was the thing that sort of got me through. Does that make sense to you? Have you used something similar before to sort of find yourself amusing?
Yeah, and I even gave a client of mine today an exercise to take away with her to do just that. Actually, just because she's worked with like I work in a way of like dealing with duality, egoic self, all our parts. We have many different parts, but essentially egoic consciousness, pain body, perceiving of fear, the voice of fear, and then the higher self, the voice of love, the voice of fear, voice of love, and about bringing presence to when that voice of fear is activated and bringing it back to love, return to love. This is what A Course in Miracles is all about. That's why I'm such a fan of A Course in Miracles. So, it's sometimes when we watch that voice of the ego, it can become very serious. Oh my God. So it's doing that, and it's telling me this, etc. And then we realize that we're even actually seeing it through the ego's eyes. The ego can be very, very tricky. So to laugh at it is a beautiful practice. Beautiful practice to go, "Oh, you absolute joker. Of course you're telling me I'm unworthy again. Of course you're manipulating this situation to show to me that I'm unworthy again. Thank you for sharing. No, thank you." In different ways.
How would you, just for me and other people, how would you define the ego? The way I see it is it's something it's like the devil in your head, but it's something that's bigger than you, that's trying to tell you that you're not great. It's full of negative sort of ideas about you and who you are. Am I down the wrong pathway? Is it something different?
You're down the perfect path there. The egoic consciousness is false ideas about ourselves. And the egoic consciousness is creating an identity for us out of the past and out of our pain. And what you said before was really quite significant. When you said that when you first started to do this practice, where you wanted to watch that in dialogue, you realized that sometimes you were mistaking it for who you are or who you were, or get emotionally involved with that voice. We get very emotionally involved in it, and we start to recognize it as who we are, but it's not who you are at all. So we want to lean into true identity, which is actually that this is going to sound very hippy dippy, but these are my beliefs and this is stuff that's worked for me. We are love, not just that we feel love or that we can be loving, but essentially our true identity is that we are love. So we're aligned with that higher self. And only when we're coming from the loving right mind are we present, and we are in the moment, and we are now. And anything else is projection of the past. It's seeing through a lens of past pain. And this is what the ego does. And the ego is, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. He has a concept of pain body, which is like emotional residue from our past that's triggered in the present. And so much of the time we get so lost in these thoughts. Oh, why did I do this? It's either, if we're either going, why did I do that? Oh my God, I can't believe I did that, you idiot. If we're either doing that or we're going, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh my God. We're not in the present. And we're guaranteed to be in suffering. We're guaranteed to be in suffering if we are in the present moment dwelling so much on the past. You know, it's going to cause us suffering.
Yeah.
Because we're in resistance to what is. We're not in the now. We've not come to the now. And in the now, when we're present, that state of stillness is expansive, and it's where we can be loving from, and it's where we can channel, you know, channel love and give love. It's the place where we can give true love from, basically.
I've spoken on previous chats, I think specifically with Alice Bradshaw, about this idea of she was collecting data on what people felt, tips from artists about what helped us to be resilient, and there was different ideas about what helped artists to be resilient. But the main thing was the idea of sharing and community and love. So it's really nice that you mentioned that actually is that the core thing that helps us to be resilient, and it helps us to go from surviving to thriving, when we are all looking after each other and understanding each other, and being aware of each other's pain body, and having the power, because we have, and the control to be able to support people and help people and ourselves to recognize the pain body and relieve ourselves of it.
Oh, absolutely. Connection is so huge. Connection is so important when it comes to mental health and well-being. It's so important that we stay feeling connected with others. And I think that this is one of the things that has been a real resilience tester for so many people over the last year, that we've been forced into mass separation, you know, and not even being able to hug and, you know, meet up with people, our beloved ones. And, you know, one of our core needs as human beings is loving connection. Connect with others, knowing we are not alone. Because essentially, well, I believe we're all one. I believe we're all from source, not in a religious sense at all. I'm not any religion, but I believe that, you know, we all came from source, so we're all related. We are all one, and that's the way I love to look at the world. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's factual, but it's a belief I have that's really, really helped me. And so that connection with others, we start to see ourselves in others, and we bring in that connection. And like you just said, you were sort of almost touching on there, those ways that we start to be of service to others. You know, when we're really in our loving right mind, we start offering it up. And, you know, and that healing kind of spreads. So for us all to take responsibility for our own healing and our own resilience, and that powering through, benefits everyone around us. You know,
awesome. I was just looking there that there's been a few waves and a couple of comments, and otherworldly .quests has just said truth. And I don't know whether that was truth in response to the idea of us all being connected, and the idea of us all sharing and coming from the same source, and whether the truth was in connection to that. But I think it's useful. I practice the idea of viewing everything, not just human beings, but nature and things outside of ourselves, as coming from the same place. And this was after reading Eckhart Tolle, of course. And I think this idea of having a philosophy or a new statement or a new way of thinking, and then bringing that statement to your mind when you're outside, or when you're washing up, when you're doing something that's more therapeutic, is really useful. Because then it's that thing, isn't it, like you said, that just repeating positive and useful ideas, finally it becomes part of the way that you think.
Absolutely, yeah. And we need to believe that, you know. And I remember when I was younger, it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I remember just praying so much, just, oh God, I just wish I had faith. I wish I believed in myself. You know, I just wish I believed, I had faith that something had my back. And now I live life in faith and hope. And even in the moments that I suffer emotionally, I thank the universe for it. I literally will sit there, suffering washing over me, you know, if trauma's even rising or whatever. I like to be very, very real about this, because I don't want anyone thinking that, okay, well, I want to get to that place where I'm recovered. Because a lot of spiritual teachers will write books, and I adore the books of spiritual teachers. I eat through them. Do you know what I mean? But there's not enough talk about their own experiences, and then we end up seeing a role model that's not a credible role model, because we're seeing someone they're perfect, they're mindful all the time, they don't suffer at all. So that's why I like to talk about my own struggles still sometimes as well. And you know, and when that rises, Doesn't mean I don't suffer, but I deal with it in a completely different way because I have faith. I have faith. Okay, this is part of healing. Thank you. Thank you for showing me something that's unhealed in me. And I'm not thanking, you know, I'm not religious in any way, but I'm thankful. I'm so grateful for this wound being shown. And Rumi says the wound is the place that the light enters you, which really gets me through some really difficult times. I love that quote. So that faith, leaning into the knowledge that we are permanently being guided in some way by our higher self, by our higher self. I mean, for me, that's been a life-changing thought. And it's something that I had to work on getting. It's not something that I was like, I'm going to choose to have faith. I remember being like, oh, I just wish I had faith. I wish. And I kept at it. And it's that practice and it's that dedication to it. You know, that dedication that there must be another way.
There's two things that I want to pick up on there, Miranda. The first thing is that it sounds like you welcome the struggles. And I know that you've said to me in the past when I was struggling, I've got in touch with you, and one of the first things you said, this is a fantastic opportunity. I was like, so it's an opportunity. What is she talking about? I feel like shit. But actually that changed my mind so much, because then it was like, wow, suddenly I see it as coming out of this with a development, like a useful self-development. This is an opportunity. So this idea, would you ask people to consciously put themselves into opportunities of struggle or trauma? But yeah, is it a really useful thing? And what tools do you need to go into these kind of situations of resilience and situations of difficulty in order to be able to treat it as an opportunity?
It is all about changing our minds, okay? Because sometimes we can live under the belief that if we change something in the external world, if we change the world around us or change that person's behavior or this situation or my circumstance, etc., then then I'll be healed. The trigger will go. But shall I tell you what? The universe will keep throwing you lessons again and again and again in different guises until you learn that lesson. So when we're triggered, and triggered means an old wound is activated, something happening in the present moment is showing up something that's unhealed in us from the past. We need to start recognizing, okay, what is going on for me? And we look within and we see truth and we go, okay, this is an old story, and we don't blame that person. You know, sometimes we need to get out of unhealthy situations, of course. There's times when we're like, okay, I need to say goodbye to this, but actually essentially our pain body or our ego or our little inner child or past self that is not healed yet will seek out situations that will trigger it again and again and again. And this is why I get so many people coming to me going, I just keep getting attracted to the same person again and again. And it's like, okay, well, you kind of blaming it on that person. And actually, if we look within, we heal the past when we choose again in the present. You know, so when we recognize our old patterns, because pain wants more pain, and it goes in a cycle, you know, and sometimes we have these habitual cycles and we keep entering the same situations. We're like, why is this feeling coming up again of, you know, whether it's abandonment, rejection, they're the most common ones. Abandonment, rejection schema for human beings. It's the most common thing that we deal with. You know, so if we take those for an example, I keep entering situations that cause me abandonment, rejection. Instead of focusing on the triggering situation at hand, we look within and we go, wow, there's something unhealed here. I'm going to choose again. And then when we do that, that's when we start to heal that schema. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. So why do people open the door to those situations that have like this absurdist cycle, this repeated cycle of pain? And just for a very brief example of, like, I used to have a bit of an alcohol issue, like many people do, and just putting myself in the same pain body situation of drinking and doing something that made me hate myself and going back to it. Why did And maybe, is it different reasons for every individual? Why do they keep going back to that? Why does that feel like an easier life rather than just addressing yourself? Because it does feel like an easier life to just keep opening the door to pain rather than addressing yourself. But maybe it's confidence. I don't know.
Confidence as well, but it's that familiarity as well. The familiarity of what we've been used to, what we've been conditioned to, what we've been conditioned with, those limiting beliefs we've been conditioned with, the angles at which we've seen ourselves through others' eyes that may have been cruel eyes, that may have been at school. Even if you've had the best parents in the world and you've had an amazing time at school, we live within a society that judges people on external value and external worth. And we are brought up to believe that our worthiness depends on someone else placing value on who we are.
Yeah.
And we see it within all films. We see it in Disney. We see it in Disney. The Sleeping Beauty needs a prince to literally wake her up, or she'd literally die if he didn't accept her. This is just an example. We're brought up in this. And it's the ego, it's the egoic consciousness creating this. If we were all living from our higher self, those stories probably wouldn't even exist. But we kind of seek out these old familiar situations. But this is why it's so important to give thanks for them, because we bring a light of presence to them. And to bring a light of presence to them, all we have to do, like I said before about watching that voice of fear, watching the ego, we bring a light of presence when we go, okay, this old story again, this old pattern again. I found myself in another situation where I'm not feeling valued. And we don't try and change the external. Sometimes we need to walk away. Yeah, of course, there are exceptions. But we don't look at the external situation. We look within and we go, okay, I have been attracted to this situation because I have a belief, a fundamental belief that I am not worthy of more.
Mm. I'm just looking at, Miranda, there's some great stuff here. Otherworldly .quest is when people are addicted to their pain. I totally we all identify with that. Pain, body, suffering. And with that word addiction, it makes me feel like we're less blameful, or maybe we should be more, have more self-compassion, which you've spoken about a lot, because actually we've got into this pattern because the world judges, as you've said, which means that we then start judging ourselves, and that's how we progress and move through the world, because that's how the world has shaped us. But this idea of it becoming addictive, it sounds like, of course it would be addictive, and of course it's hard to break out of. So this is where the understanding of what we've been brought into accidentally comes in, and that self-compassion and not blaming ourselves. So how much work do you do with forgiveness and sort of self-compassion?
So much work with it. I believe it's just the foundation of all mental health recovery. I believe self-compassion is, and in line with self-compassion, we lean into forgiveness as well. We have got into habits in this life of guilt tripping ourselves and judging ourselves so badly, and then we end up judging and attacking others as well when we're in that pain state, kind to ourselves. And I'm just going to touch on what otherworldly.quest has I think it's he has said it gives them a sense of identity. And this is a very important point, actually, because like I said before, sometimes we mistake the pain body for who we are. We mistake that self of pain, that egoic consciousness, for who we are, and it is not. We need to recognize our true sense of self. We need to recognize who we are in truth, in our identity, as we were created, or as an extension of source. Not, again, I'm going to just reiterate, I'm not talking about religion here. I'm not any religion. But, self-compassion. The reason the role of self-compassion is so powerful in this practice is because if we talk about the duality that we have as human beings. We have the egoic consciousness, the false ideas about ourselves. We have the residual pain and the past. Then we have the higher self, at peace already within us all. The conditioning's grown around it. We all have peace underneath everything. It doesn't matter if you've got a huge pain body. We have that duality. When we become identified with our past and our past pain, it's meshed like this. And we are mistaking it for who we are. We're becoming involved with that past. We're becoming emotionally involved with that pain. We are saying, me and my traumatic childhood, me and my diagnosis of this, me and my anxiety, etc., etc. We're labeling ourselves. And like you just said, we're judging. We're calling ourselves things. We're trying to make understanding out of something which is almost like reality. So we have that emotional involvement. The second we bring self-compassion in and we lean into, wow, okay, I acknowledge this is a moment of suffering. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry you're suffering right now. Whew. The split happens. Immediately the split happens because we're bringing in that voice of love. So we become the highest self in that moment when we sit with ourselves and we allow our hearts to melt for the suffering that we are going through. And we go, this is so hard right now. Sweetheart, you're doing the best you can. Come on, it's okay. Because we recognize that when we suffer, it doesn't matter what has happened. And it doesn't matter what you've done. If you're guilt tripping yourself, you don't deserve it. I have zero tolerance policy, actually, against guilt. When we talk about self-compassion, I don't care what you've done. I don't care what has gone on. If you are suffering emotionally, you are deserving of love and compassion when you suffer. And that recognition is what we start the self-compassionate practice with. And with self-compassionate practice, I always start with the line, okay, acknowledge this as a moment of suffering, and then lean into it. And I love to practice soothing and self-touch as well. I find that really positive to do. But what's very, very funny is, like, you know, we talked about it being a process. Self-compassion has become like very habitual to me. I use it, I teach it, I live in that way. But literally, I'm 37 now. If we go back to when I was 30 even, when I first started to try self-compassionate practice, I found it excruciating. I hated myself so much. And my inner dialogue was, oh God, I hate you so much. It was abusive.
It was your inner dialogue telling you reasons, like biting back, telling you reasons why you didn't deserve it because you were addressing it.
Oh God, this is so disgusting. Yeah, you don't deserve it. But I stuck at it because the suffering was too much. I had that motivation. The suffering was too much. And this is why I'm telling you that recovery is possible. I know recovery is possible, and it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter your present situation. It doesn't matter your life circumstance. It doesn't matter what relationship you're in. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what age you are. Recovery is always possible. Always. It's always possible to feel better and learn new ways of managing our suffering.
There's like 4 things that I'm trying to hold on to in my head that I want to know from you. So I'm going to go through them really quickly. I just want to come back to this idea of identity. Now, it seems to me really easy to fall into fixing your identity because we need clarity. People need clarity and they need to label themselves, and they can know who they are and can carry on with their life. Now, what you were talking about, to me, feels like what's useful is an independence, observing this false identity and making a choice about it and taking control of it. And with this idea of independence, I'm just going to touch upon somebody else, Delpha Hudson, in my last chat, was saying that one of her methods for resilience was to explore different, be independent and explore yourself in different ways and see yourself in different ways. So it's like a constant search for the self, which seems to fit in with what you're saying. Do you? And then I'm going to talk about what Max Lutherford said after that. But do you advocate this idea of searching for the self and enjoying the self?
I adore that, yeah. And there's actually a therapy system called internal family systems. And it's about us working with our many different parts. We have many different parts, not just this duality. We have many different parts of us, you know, inner child, and we have inner teenager, you know, we have lots of different parts. So sort of we don't want to get rid of any of those parts. We want them to work together. We want to work together with them all and bring them together. And the higher self will always be the one that's the comforter. And this is why self-compassion is so important, that we lean into soothing and comforting. I swear to God, it will get you through anything. If we talk about resilience, it'll get you through anything. If you have that voice on you that's building you up rather than tearing you down, it can get you through so much, do you know?
I always have this thing, Miranda, that when I try and practice not blaming myself and being okay as part of meditation, that forgiveness idea and self-compassion, the first thing that my head says is that if I forgive myself for this, I won't learn a lesson and I won't become a better person. I don't know if you've come across that before, but that stops me, because it's almost like I need to punish myself for it, because I need to learn that it's not right, because I might make the mistake again. So if I forgive myself, you know, like with a child, if you sort of go, oh, that's fine, take somebody else's sweets, and then they don't learn not to. It's kind of like an adult version of that. Have you come across that before with clients?
The ego is very tricky. The ego is very sneaky, and the ego loves to guilt trip. The ego feeds off guilt, and the ego feeds off more pain. And the learning is forgiveness. So forgiveness in its very, the way it moves, that is the learning. Because if you let yourself off the hook, that's an action from the loving right mind. That will be the lesson learned. That will prevent.
Okay. Would you normally accompany that, letting yourself off the hook and forgiving yourself for something that you feel has been wrong? Would that be accompanied with words, for example, like, you didn't mean to do it, you know, you're a great person, but you just would choose to do it not again in the future. And if you see that person, you might say, I'm sorry I did that, but it's okay that you did it. So would that normally accompany with some dialogue?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and if we need to say sorry, that's a place from which we will apologize as well, you know. But if we let ourselves off the hook, we need to be in a permanent state of forgiveness. And shall I tell you why? Actually, because the past is not even here. And when I started to recognize that, the past, it's gone. So if we can be in a permanent state of letting ourselves off the hook, we're letting the past go. We go, okay, I've done that. Don't really want to do that again. You were doing the best you can. Come on, sweetheart. It's okay. We're going to make better choices in the future, because we are armed with an inner coach, and we are armed with a loving right mind. We're armed with that loving voice within, and we're holding ourselves in a new light. So those actions are going to snowball. The love will snowball. We'll be able to give more love. We'll be able to receive more love. We'll be able to communicate with people differently. We'll be able to connect with people differently. If we're guilt tripping ourselves and beating ourselves up because you deserve punishment, you deserve guilt, if we're doing that, what we're going to be shining out, because the internal reflects on the external, what we're going to be shining out is that person's to blame, this is the guilt, and it repeats that cycle, and it keeps that cycle going. So what I always say to people, even when we're struggling with addiction, for example, and that could be addiction to things, people, events, buzz, whatever, this cycle can sometimes actually be interrupted by self-compassion, where we do not punish ourselves after we've made the mistake. And a lot of people can't get their head around this, because they're like, but then I'm rewarding myself for what I've done.
Yeah, it feels wrong.
Yeah. We'll make better choices next time. Come on, it's all right. It's okay. And when we forgive ourselves, what we're doing is building the higher self. We're building the loving right mind. And the higher self is going to make those choices if we strengthen her or him. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. So with constant self-compassion and self-forgiveness, then you become that compassionate person. And yeah, no, absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you, Miranda. I'm just going to touch upon something that Max Lufa Photo said. I like that name. I'm just going to scroll down. It said, I make myself cry using music to feel. Me too. I love that. But that takes us into a really useful realm of sometimes your body or your mind just finds itself in specific moods, or specific emotions of specific states, and you can manage that really well, and it can be a productive thing, and that's obviously something that Max is doing now. So how useful is it to follow to go with the flow of the body and allow yourself to express when it needs it, and what kind of ways can you do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so beautiful to bring it to the body. And I love what Max has said there, actually. I make myself cry using music to feel, he said. Now, it's, at a funeral, that's the point at which people start crying, isn't it? When the music comes on, and music is used to move us. Any art form, actually. This is why I'm so attracted to the arts as well, because they make us feel something. It's not something that we have to think too much about a lot of the time, especially when it comes to music or dance. It's the emotion. And, when we talk about, like, I'm so moved by that. Well, yeah, the physical movement is something. Emotion is an energy. We do not want it to get lodged. If we don't express how we feel, or shake it out, or move the energy, then it becomes stuck and it gets bigger. It doesn't go anywhere if we don't express ourselves. This is the problem. It actually grows and it gets bigger and it becomes blocks and it becomes illness, actually. It becomes pain and it can become illness. So we need to be releasing this. So music, using that to sort of move emotion in your body, beautiful practice, gorgeous practice of presence, actually, coming to be with a piece of music, you know, in the present moment. Gorgeous practice, that, Max. Yeah.
And so do you think that obviously with expressing yourself in the presence, that's where the opportunity for creative processes and creative decisions come in? Do you feel like that if you don't express it at that time and it gets sort of blocked up, then you lose the creative aspect of it? Or maybe you can just store it up?
Yeah. Well, can sort of speak our mind later on. We don't have to beat ourselves up for not speaking. So it doesn't always feel safe to express ourselves, and that's okay. We let ourselves off the hook for that. This is why forgiveness is so great. Forgive yourself in every moment. You'll become a lot more of a loving person. Guaranteed. You don't deserve beating up. Doesn't matter what's gone on. If you forgive yourself, you become more of a loving person. Guaranteed. But with music, it's a very interesting one, because I think that when we are aligned with a creative force and we're creating, I believe it's a very mindful thing. And I think that sometimes if I've been on stage and I've started thinking, that is when I've been cut off that flow. You know, when we're performing or creating, we're almost like channeling this higher self energy. I mean, you must feel it from when you're performing as well, this sort of energy moving through us. It's like that creative flow, you know. And
sorry, Miranda, I'm just going to go in there. When you said that, the thing that came to my mind is, which I'd like to know your thoughts on, is I'm looking at the idea of embarrassment and vulnerability at the moment. I'm reading A Director Prepares by Anne Bogart, and she's got a whole chapter on embarrassment and the importance of embarrassment in arts, performing arts, music, theatre, whatever. Because if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you're never projecting an authentic self, and you're never finding something beyond the fixed idea. You're never finding something interesting and something new. But it's really difficult to embarrass yourself and allow yourself to be exposed. Like, I used to be better at it, and I'm coming away from it now. So I'm trying to work with it with my actors, bit by bit. How important is it to you to allow yourself to be fragile and vulnerable? And has that been a useful thing in your music practice?
Essential, absolutely essential to be able to be vulnerable, because otherwise I would never share anything that I did. It's feeling that, oh God, that fear or whatever, witnessing the voice of fear and going, no, this is me. This is authentically me. And then we're able to share the joy of who we are with the world. Not everyone's going to like what we do. It doesn't really matter. You know, as long as we love what we're doing, we're authentic. Because when we are in joy, that's shared exponentially across the world. A Course in Miracles has a beautiful lesson: when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. So it's like, if we lean into feeling joy, that's how we heal the world. If we all lean into doing something that we love and sharing that with the world. And this is why the arts are so vital, so vital, that we're sharing our own unique, authentic voice within the arts. Because we're not thinking too much about it when we're in that state, when we're creating. You know, we're leaning into being creatively inspired. We're leaning into creative force, you know, and being vulnerable. I love Brene Brown. Have you heard of Brene Brown?
No.
Oh, wow. She has a book called The Power of Vulnerability, and she's a shame, but her books are really fun. It doesn't sound very fun that she's a shame researcher, but they are. And she talks about the difference between guilt and shame. And I suppose it's the difference between embarrassment and shame as well. Okay. So embarrassment, I suppose, would be where we do something that we feel embarrassed of and we go, oh God, that was embarrassing, or that's made me feel guilty, but we don't mistake it for who we are. But shame is the real killer. Shame is where we go, oh, I did that thing wrong, you know, and I'm embarrassed about it. I am a terrible person. I am awful. And crushing. Shame is really, really crushing. So to be able to keep it in embarrassment, that's okay. It's healthy, actually. A lot healthier. Do you know what I mean? For us to be working in that way with it. And we need to recognize the universally felt emotions. You know, you're not ever on your own with feeling. It's something we all feel.
Do you know, absolutely. And I think in the arts, that's when I'm most aware of that, because you were talking about people enjoying their vulnerability. And I feel like if I watch somebody on stage and then I can sense whether they're enjoying what they're doing or whether they're allowing themselves to really be embodied by their art, and whether they're really allowing themselves to have a new experience and be vulnerable. I'm attracted to it when I see that. But if somebody isn't and they're just walking the motions, I feel like not unattracted by them, but I'm not as engaged by it. And maybe that's that universal connection that I understand the things that I see when I'm watching, you know, theatre or music. So maybe art brings that universal connection out.
Oh, it really does. Yeah. And it's so true, actually, because what you're almost picking up on in that moment is the energy of that performer. We you know, I love the saying, which is, we are not human beings having spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having human experiences. We are masses of energy. That's what we are. We feel other people's energy. You know, sometimes we can tell something about someone, we can sense different. We're spiritual beings. We pick up on each other's energy and that reflects into art, into the art world. So of course we can pick up if someone's in full creative power and they're really aligned and channeling what they're doing and in love with what they're doing. You can feel that. And that's why it's infectious. And that's why some performers are more intoxicating than others. I think Max Lucifer was saying before that he listens to Björk when he's struggling. Well, she's a classic example, isn't she? She's in her element when she's performing. She was born for that purpose. You know,
absolutely. And I guess a lot of people might look at Björk. When I say a lot of people, I'm talking about my mum when I was very younger. And I think Björk was on Jules Holland, and she was like, she had like, I don't know whether I just remember her this way or whether she actually had her hair kind of like sculptured and fiery up. And it was a staccato, stoppy-starty kind of song where her voice was doing the staccato, and it would just pause and then she'd come back in again. And it was a bit like the weather. Now, I found it absolutely, like you say, intoxicating, because she was putting herself in a position of doing something new that people might have easily rejected. You know, and people might say that she's embarrassing herself, like my mum did. I went, oh, what is she doing? And I was like, no, but this is, I can see the authenticity. I'm like, oh, I'm so attracted to her right now. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And yeah, a brilliant example of that.
And this is what happens when, so for you, potentially you saw yourself in her, because we see ourselves reflected in others. And there's something sometimes, and this is why the arts are so powerful, and this is why we need to share our own authentic self. You adore Björk, your mum's not into her. But for you, something clicked there with you. Something was reflected back to you about you, essentially, within what she was doing, whether it's the dynamic, the feeling that she'd put into it. Maybe you'd had that similar emotion when, you know, as she did when she was writing the song, for example. Something resonates. You can guarantee that when you create art or music, painting, drawing, acting, whatever you're doing within the arts field, you can guarantee that someone is going to resonate with you. So do not think too hard about pleasing other people. Never go into art thinking, right, I want people to think this. I'm worried they're not going to like that bit. That bit might not be likable enough, so I'm going to tone it down. Don't tone it.
Oh, Miranda, I'm hearing what you're saying so much. But you know, it was the bravery of Björk, but that I think I really liked. And I thought, wow, she's brave enough to do it, and that's what I want to do. But just pick up on what you were saying about not really prioritizing your demographic, your audience, but prioritizing yourself and following the voice that you want to have.
Yes.
That is so difficult. And I remember when I was doing my training in theatre, I would get questioned. You would get questioned after performance. And I remember one particular performance, and I was saying, as long as I'm getting the thing that I want to get off my chest, it doesn't really matter to me. And I thought again, the ego going, that's so arrogant. How could you say that? And then I think that the person that was kind of running the panel said, but what about the audience? You know, you should be, or we were trained to consider the audience. And of course, it is important to inherently consider the audience, because you've got to be clear about your communication. But there was such an emphasis on Are they going to like it or not like it? Are they going to be able to find a relevant meaning in it? It's like, well, do you know what? It's fine to be abstract. It's fine to have people walking away saying, I thought this, but I thought that. I didn't quite get it. I'm going to think further about it. So I just want to say, I really love what you're saying there.
And we can guarantee that if we're sort of leaning in when we're creating our art, if we're leaning into, oh God, I'm worried they're not going to like this bit, you're cutting off creative source. You're cutting off any inspiration. You're cutting off the ability to sort of channel love for what you do and be authentically you. So we need to hear your voices, you know, to all artists out there. We want to hear your authentic voice. And this is why artists like Björk, it's like, she's just so her. You can tell. She doesn't give a shit about what you're not going to get Björk before she goes on stage going, I'm worried people aren't going to like my outfit. She just rocks up in a swan. She literally rocks up dressed like a swan. In fact, she's like, I love this so much. I hope she's probably like, I hope other people love it as much as I do, but I'm going to make a statement, you know. And this is what we want to do. And this is where we don't want the arts to get boring. We want it to be daring. Do you know what I mean? We want it to be daring. I want to hear new voices, because if we're repeating what people have already found pleasing, we've got a very boring medium for art.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be bringing something new, bringing something you know, bring something of ourselves. So yeah, I would always say that if we're going to put something out there, performances or art in any way, music, do what you love. Write a piece that you really love. Don't think, oh, that hook's a bit, is that hook a bit, oh, people going to resonate with the words in it? No, I love it. I love it. So much.
You've got to enjoy it, because it can be so difficult as an artist, you know, in this world. And we try to pull away from the idea of competition, but you know, regretfully sometimes get sucked into it, because you try to compete for a platform against somebody else, or you know, you feel like you're in competition, and you just shouldn't feel that. But there are so many reasons to not enjoy it and to get downtrodden by trying to be an artist. So that feels like a top tip for resilience, Miranda, is to don't move away from the reason why you went into it, and don't move away from enjoying it.
Yeah, leaning into love and leaning into that vulnerability and giving yourself a pat on the back and going, yes, it's fucking challenging. It's really challenging for us to share that part of ourselves with the world. Give yourself a pat on the back. Don't beat yourself up for like, oh my God, I'm nervous what people will think. It's very natural and normal that if you're getting on stage or releasing some art, it's quite a natural thing that a lot of people would have. But yeah, the comparisons, I think I said it in the talk that we did a few months ago, comparisons are going to cause you suffering. Do not compare yourself to other people. Bring you, be you, love what you do. Lean
Second top tip to resilience. We've got a couple of minutes left, Miranda. So I just wanted to give you a platform to mention what you wanted to mention about resilience to people. If you want me to ask you a question, I'm fine to do that. Or if there's anything that you'd like to get off your chest in the last few minutes, then please do.
Is it like, it's like my last request for a meal or something like that? Yeah. So resilience, getting knocked down, but getting back up again. Recognizing that we all have the ability to change. We all have the ability to feel better. We all have the ability to recover, and keep that faith, keep that hope, even in those darkest moments of suffering. Lean on that Rumi quote, the wound is a place that the light enters you, and learn to choose again. Be kind to yourself and bring the love in from within for you.
That's so beautiful. Miranda, you are a constant sunshine in my life and lots of other people's. I'm so pleased that you are doing this chat. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that tuned in, and the inspiring things that you were saying that was sort of funding our conversation. That was absolutely lovely. This is going to be online. It's going to be on the CVIVArts YouTube channel by Saturday, as soon as I've uploaded it. And it's also going to be, I know Miranda's going to share it as well, and it'll be on the CVIVArts Instagram for you to go back to whenever you want, along with other conversations that I've done with art specialists about resilience. They will also be on the CVIVArts YouTube channel. So if you're studying that subject or you're interested in people's thoughts, check it out later. Miranda, last thoughts.
just thank you so much for having me, and you're an inspiration to me as well, Carrie. Like, yeah, everything you're doing, you're wonderful. It's just been such a pleasure, and thank you so much to everyone who's joined us today as well. It's been lovely communicating with you all and connecting. Huge love, everyone. Mwah.
Huge love, everyone, and go and have yourself something nice, and take care. Okay, bye bye, everybody.
Bye.